Welcome to Your Family Dog, a podcast dedicated to helping families love living with dogs.
Hi, I'm Tina Spring, and I'm joined today with Julie Fudge Smith, my co-host for Your Family Dog. And today we're going to have a conversation with Charlie, a mom who has kind of an interesting story that I think she's gonna have a great conversation with us. So welcome to the show, Charlie.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. We're super excited to get to talk to you.
We are super excited. We have a lot of experts who come on. We have a lot of vets and trainers and stuff. But I think some of our favorite podcasts are those when we have, quote unquote, more real people on to talk about real people problems. And I know that you had a particular issue with the puppy that you decided to adopt. So maybe you could tell us a little bit of your story about what brings you on today to talk with us.
Well, my family and I adopted a 6-week-old Australian Shepherd, and it was through a friend that we knew that was breeding these puppies, and I saw that she posted on Facebook about them, and they looked like the ones that we had talked about getting in the future. And so we reached out to her and just kind of got some information, and she said they were available, and we went there and picked him out. And on the car ride there, I was excited because the conversation that I'd had with my husband many nights prior was that this is what we wanted for our family. We have a 4-year-old little girl. We had a baby on the way, and we're like, okay, what the heck? Let's do this. If we're not going to do it now, when are we going to do it? You know, we grew up with dogs. And the whole ride there, I felt anxious but excited. My husband was excited, so I was feeding off of that. My little girl was excited. But there was still like this looming cloud of, oh, what am I getting myself into? How am I going to do this? Is this the right timing? You know, so we get him, and immediately I did not connect with him. Usually with a puppy, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. And you connect with it because it's fluffy and it's, you know, tiny. And I just didn't connect with him. And that made me worried. But then we got in the car, and then even more flooded thoughts started coming in, like all of the realization of what comes with a puppy, the potty training, the nights up with them, the biting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just had a huge full of doubt right away. So we kept him for, I think it was 8 weeks at that point. And those thoughts just didn't go away no matter what we did and how much time and effort we put into him. It didn't go away for me. And I think slowly my husband was also realizing that as well. So here we are.
So did your husband, I was just going to say, did your husband connect with the puppy?
I think so. I think more so than I did, for sure.
Okay.
Well, and probably more than their daughter too, right? Like she liked the puppy, but so what was amazing about this particular case is everyone and everything involved in it is magnificent. Like, one of the things that I said to Charlie and her family was, this puppy is amazing. Like, he has magic. Your little girl has magic. Mom and dad each have magic. And yet it's not working, right? And we have a baby coming, you know, soon in the next couple of months. So, what was amazing to me, well, like this puppy, and I remember saying this to Charlie and her husband, like, this puppy is actually a puppy that I would say, if any family could do it, you could do it. The question is, should we and do we want to?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's just going to get harder, right? Like, when we have a 3-month-old puppy, you're in the middle of when it's easy. Really. I mean, yes, they're waking up a lot and they're eating a lot and they're, you know, but we're not even in teenager puppy stage. That gets a little bit more dicey.
Right. And I think too, when we went to your first class, we were excited to put him into somewhere that we could learn the necessary things to raise a really good dog. And we brought our daughter with us, and then Tina expressed to us, this isn't going to get easier. And those words in that moment did not offend me. I didn't take, I wasn't like, oh, I can do anything kind of thought. It was, this woman I've only known for less than 5 minutes has just brought to the surface all of the things I already knew, but I needed somebody on the outside of my family to give me a little bit of dose of reality. Like, hey, do you know what you're really getting yourself into?
So it was really easy. It was really easy when I looked over and could just see that you're wiped out. Like you're really working hard to do everything perfect and right, and it's not fun and it's not rewarding. And that was, so Julie, one of the amazing things is how invested Charlie is in this puppy, right? Like if you want to talk about like the perfect puppy raiser, Charlie did all those things. Like all the things, like super, like had him on a schedule. Like this puppy's doing great. And yet we ought not. Like it's just, which is, and Julie, so Charlie, you don't know this. Julie's actually going through puppy raising right now with a big old boot on her foot.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe with her husband out of town, right?
Well, at least he's back to work. So like today, he left about 11 and he won't be back till 10 o'clock tonight because he's got a late class. Gosh. And so since Clementine, because I'm not as good at puppy raisers as you are, Charlie, Clementine is not completely housebroken yet. So she's spending a good deal of her time in the kitchen. So that means not only am I under house arrest with this boot, I'm under house arrest in my kitchen. So So I spend most of my time going, God, I wish I could sweep. But
yeah.
So but I have to, because what I find is that like Clemmy is good. When she needs to go, and I can't move fast enough to get to the door if I'm not in the kitchen. So yeah, he's going out of town the next couple of days. So I'll be sleeping downstairs. Rather than
I was going to say, so do you have a cot?
Oh, gosh.
So I get the challenge. But, luckily it's me and the 2 dogs and my husband when he can be here. It's a completely different ball game when you throw little people into the loop. Like when my grandkids come to visit, I've got my younger daughter has a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old, and she's pregnant. And when they come, Clementine and Zuzu spend a lot more time outside because Clemmy is still little and she doesn't understand 18 months old, or 3-year-olds all that well. So I can only begin to imagine how exhausted you must have been and how much it just, I think what people forget if they haven't had kids in a while, or if they don't have kids they don't understand, is that having a toddler means that everything you do takes 3 times as long as it normally does and it requires twice the amount of energy than if you were just doing it on your own. So everything from just trying to get to the grocery store, much less getting through the grocery store, right, requires a great deal, a lot more time, a lot more energy. And then you throw in the fact that you are also pregnant and you have a puppy, that becomes a time management nightmare and an energy nightmare and an emotional nightmare, because there's so many layers, so many triggers. That's like trigger stacking. You're just putting too many things on top of one another.
So again, like I'm going to go back to, they actually have really extenuating circumstances. Their daughter is super independent. She's not into everything. She's super responsible, right? So your family's done a really great job and have good fortune that we have a child who will play by herself and is perfectly content to do that and isn't all up, trying to hug and kiss the puppy all the time, right? She's not trying to climb in your lap, constantly. She's really independent. And so again, as we were pulling apart the situation and saying, okay, how best to proceed, your family had a lot of really great things going for if you wanted to continue doing this. We had some really good bones, right? An organized household. We had family members that had the energy and the wherewithal to do that. The family, there's a lot of just good structure in place, right, to help navigate all of it. But then it became this question of, but what if we don't want to? But Charlie expressed to me that she had horrible postpartum with Ava. And that was just crippling. It was crippling. And I think, and if I'm wrong, tell me, but it almost sounded to me like Charlie was anticipating that would be a problem again. Maybe even feeling some of that same stuff again. And that a puppy on top of all of that just sounded miserable and just something that could not be sorted out. Am I wrong about that?
No, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, I think I was already displaying, looking back on it now, I was already displaying signs of not necessarily postpartum depression, obviously, but depression, because it was almost the same as having an infant there and you're trying to do all of the things yourself, not asking for help, right? Which is how I got myself in that situation when I had Ava. I thought I could do all. Nobody could help me. I had it. I was inadequate as a mother if I didn't do it all myself with her. So it was kind of the same with the puppy. I was trying to do all of the things and drowning myself is the best way I can say it. I was literally fighting to stay above water. And that terrified me because I'm like, okay, if I'm already feeling this way with a puppy and then my almost 4-year-old, and then I'm going to be giving birth to a newborn, with all the baby blues that come with that, how am I going to function and be healthy for my family? And that terrified me.
Well, and then we add all the layers of all the social stigma, right?
Right.
Of if you return, like, how's the breeder going to be if you contact the breeder? How are your neighbors? How are your family? How are the people on social media who see the cute, adorable puppy? Like, all of the social stigma that goes with, well, what if we do decide to call it quits and to say this isn't a great fit? So, Charlie, do me a favor and talk a little bit about how the situation resolved so that any of our listeners who might be going, well, this was, she should have, whatever, had their stuff going on. Let them know how awesomely this has resolved so that their hearts are not troubled about what happened with this sweet puppy who we adore.
Right. Well, first of all, I reached out to you to know, use my resources to know what are my options. Yes, I know I can keep the puppy. Okay. We're currently enrolled in a puppy class. We got that going. We have a schedule for him. He's great. There's no complaints. But what are my other options to give him the best home possible that at this time I couldn't give him? So, there's the Australian Shepherd Rescue. I saw Puppy Finder, which I've looked at puppies via that website before with other breeders. I reached out to the breeder, and initially the breeder said she could not take the puppy back. So I just said, well, can you keep a lookout for families that may have been interested in your puppies prior? So she said, sure. So in the meantime, I'm waiting for that to happen. I'm reaching out to the Australian Shepherd Rescue. They contact me back, weren't that nice about it. So I kind of pushed that one aside, put him on Puppy Finder. And I had a woman actually reach out to me, but she was in Florida. And I just didn't feel comfortable having Ozzy be not in the same state for some reason. I kind of still wanted to know that he was doing really well and be close. So eventually the breeder contacted me and found a family that we actually knew who was interested in her puppies before they were all sold out. And he was wanting to take Ozzy home that afternoon. This was a Friday. And so I actually spoke with him, and he came to the house and met Ozzy and fell in love. And then he was able to go home with him. And knowing that Ozzy is blocks away, essentially, and in a home where he has two other dog companions, an Australian Shepherd, who I think is a year old, and then they have an older golden retriever, and then two children that are not young. I think the oldest is 16 and the other one is 10. So that whole dynamic was perfect for Ozzy, I think. And that made me feel really good about rehoming him, because I was in a dark place thinking of rehoming this animal that I was supposed to commit to, and I couldn't do at the time. So it worked out the way that I think it was supposed to. So although I'm really sad about it, he's in a really, really good spot, and I keep in contact with that family to know that he's doing really well.
Right. And so I just wanted to resolve it for the people whose hearts were worried about sweet Ozzy, that this was never like, a situation where he was going to be at any risk at all. Like, he had all the advantages of a whole team of people who wanted a really great outcome for him too. One of the things that I often find myself talking with families about is that rehoming is not the worst thing that can happen. And I think actually the worst thing that can happen is to keep the wrong dog in the wrong home at the wrong time, right? It doesn't allow anyone, right? It puts the dog at risk. It can, and in your case, Ozzy was sweet as pie, right? Like, there wasn't a behavior problem. But for example, one that we sometimes come across in my practice is a dog who's really, really uncomfortable with the busy household with little kids, who just wants like a cushy retirement gig and is in a household with really busy little kids. And the dog is never comfortable. The kids can't really enjoy the dog either. And it's just kind of a square peg in a round hole. And I think that sometimes well-meaning friends, neighbors, people on social media will just be judgy, and not recognize that this wasn't, that the decision to rehome, in my experience, most families, it takes about 8 months to make that decision. Right? Well, if we had waited 8 months in your case, there's an awful lot that would have been at risk.
Right.
More than I'm willing to gamble, right? And more that any trainer should be willing to gamble. I think being moms and dads and humans in this world, there's an awful lot of we're not good enough anyway. Like, you're just not, like you said earlier, like, if you're not doing this and that, then you're not a good mom, or you're not a good dog owner. I'm just going to tell you, anytime you need someone to throw the BS flag on that, I will joyfully, you can call me, I will sing your praises, right? But I think people can sometimes have an emotional response to the idea of a dog or a puppy being moved on to something else without recognizing the harm that might do to the dog. But also, I mean, I don't think it would have been good for Ozzy to grow up in a household where everybody's stressed out, and while you like him, he's not filling a dog-shaped hole in your heart. Right? He's just one more thing for you to have to do, right? One more thing that has one more responsibility. I mean, I don't think, and you're a dog lover.
Right.
But we don't have to sign up for that.
Well, one of the things I was going to say too is my experience with people who get rather judgmental about if you keep a dog, it's a dog for life, right? Or whatever, had never been in the situation where they have the extenuating circumstances. They are not the ones who have to live with these circumstances day in and day out. And until you've actually had that experience, even for a couple of days, you have no appreciation about how difficult and how heart-wrenching this situation is for a family. And
Yes.
there's this common phrase that just makes my hackles go up, which is, oh, it's not the dog, it's the owner. And you know what? Sometimes it's the dog. Sometimes it's just the situation.
Right.
Sometimes it's just, it's not the dog and it's not the owner. It's the circumstances surrounding that particular pairing. And I ask people to try to take a step back and think about a time in your life where you felt judged by somebody and thought it was unfair because that person didn't, try to walk in your shoes. And so if you're going to start thinking that these people should never have gotten a puppy, well, maybe they shouldn't have, but you know what? They did. And we do these things. We think we're ready, and sometimes we're not. And so I think that you were very brave, very compassionate, very honest with yourselves and about this dog. And I think that you should be commended for the decision that you made, because it was the right thing for not just your family, but I think it's the right thing for the dog. I think Tina really hit that on the head. And I think she's found it, and I have over the years as a trainer, that I put families first. And if I do what's right for the family, if I help them make the best decision for the family, inevitably we have made the right decision for the dog as well. Because everybody has a stake in the relationships. Everybody has a stake in the situation. And how can we best resolve this? There are seldom a perfect solution, but there's oftentimes a much better solution than the one we're currently in. So
has there been pushback in your community, Charlie, about rehoming Ozzy?
I honestly didn't tell anybody. Obviously my husband knows, and then my parents, who I'm extremely close with, who I actually called shortly after getting off the phone with you that day when we were weighing all the options. But I didn't tell friends. I didn't tell even close family, because there was still this feeling of I failed, and that I was going to be judged, because from the outside, nobody knows the inside of what's going on, like you said, and I mean, I don't feel like I had any explaining to do to people, to be quite honest, because it was a decision for my family, myself, and for Ozzy, that what anybody was going to say was not going to change my mind, and how I felt it was the best decision for everyone that was involved. And my parents, who I'm extremely close with, said, yeah, we could tell that when we would come visit you, that you were so spread thin, but we didn't say anything because we know you're one of those people that you're going to keep pushing on, because that's just who I am. I don't give up, and I don't let people see me, struggling. So no, I haven't gotten anything from anyone, because I haven't said anything.
But you'll get it now.
If somebody asks, I'll tell them. Right. But my friend came over last night, and and she's the first person I've told to their face, and she was like, I think you made a great decision, and she has a dog. So I don't really care what a stranger is going to think, because they don't know my situation, they don't know me. But no, to answer your question short, no, I have not received any.
Good.
Yeah,
anything.
That's excellent.
So when we were discussing the options, right, we talked about, like, is this just immediate fatigue? And in my case, I have the opportunity, the availability of the puppy coming and staying with me for for a period of time and just letting a family kind of let the dust settle, let things reset. And then maybe think, okay, if we reorganize things, does that change the situation? So that was one option, is that the puppy could come and they could just take a break and make a decision. Then, of course, there was the option of having the puppy come and maybe do a board and train to, again, give them some distance, but also work through anything that their family might be struggling with, or that the puppy was struggling with. Then there was, we can return the puppy to the breeder. For most people who are buying from a purebred breeder, that is, if you're going to rehome, the number one, usually you have a contractual obligation to give the breeder what is called a right of first refusal, which means you contact the breeder and say, hey, something's changed, we've changed our mind, whatever. Most reputable breeders are going to take that dog back. Sometimes they just can't, and I try not to judge them about that. And then next is, rescue or utilizing your network, or asking the breeder, hey, if someone calls you for a puppy. This puppy was still very young and was awesome. If I thought I had the bandwidth for a puppy, he would be here. Because he's a pretty awesome kiddo. But we talked through, here are all the different options. And I try to be really careful to not put pressure to influence the decision, but to just say, here are all the different options. What feels like it's going to be the best answer. So, Charlie, are there things I could have done differently that would have made it easier?
No. I think talking to you that day, I think we talked for, 2 hours maybe. I think you made me feel better about the decision that I had already made before I answered your phone call. I kind of already knew that I was done. Like, I was so spent. I was so overwhelmed and tired that, no, I don't know. I think that you made it easier just by talking to me and giving me my options. So I was glad to know that I had options, even though I'd already made a decision. Right.
Right.
And, I think also talking to my husband the night before, he's a very logical person and he weighs all pros and cons of things. And he said, yeah, we really messed up on this one. I feel like we should have thought of this as a whole a little bit more and really sat down and talked about it a little bit more than we did. But he knew the minute that we left the training session, he's like, she's right. We can't do this. So, I just love that I came to you and knew what the options were, because otherwise I really wouldn't have known the options or the resources that I had available to me, and I think it helped make the decision a lot easier for me. I'm just glad that he's somewhere that I know where he is and who he's with. Right. Right. I think some people might want the opposite. They don't want to know. I did. I wanted to know he was somewhere safe and he was going to be loved on and treated the way that he deserved to be treated through life.
Right. A continuation of the love you had extended to him.
Right.
Well, I just want to say, I like the point that you made about talking to Tina. If you are in a situation that you're facing right now, where it feels nearly impossible to keep the dog, but it feels impossible to get rid of the dog, and you're really in a quandary as to what to do, what your options do you have? I can't recommend talking to a positive reinforcement trainer enough. You can go to the Pet Professional Guild and do a trainer search by zip code there, or the Association of Pet Dog Trainers and do a zip code search there, or contact Tina or me, and we can help you find a trainer in your area. But it's helpful to talk to somebody who's not in the situation, has some years of experience, and can look at this from the outside in and give you some options that maybe you didn't realize that you had. So if you're in a quandary, don't hesitate to reach out. Most trainers are more than happy to try and help somebody come up with a resolution to a situation that's going to make both them and the dog happy. So I'm glad you found Tina, but others who are out there, don't think that there's not somebody to help you, because there are. This is what a good trainer wants to do, is to help the situation be the best for everyone involved.
Yeah, and if a trainer's
Absolutely.
if a trainer's judging you, like there are a lot of trainers.
There are.
Like
Yeah.
I already have enough people in my life who make my life more difficult. I need someone who listens, right? When I'm seeking the counsel of someone, I need someone who kind of sets aside their own agenda and picks up mine. And that's what I endeavor to do for the families I work with. So, how I might, and in your case, I absolutely agreed with the decision you make. I was heartbroken that we weren't going to continue to work together, right? Because your family is exactly who I want as a client, right? Like you're a fantastic family. You arguably don't need me. So my heart was sad about that, but I totally was on board with, like, I want this dog and this family to have a great life. One of the things that we discussed, which seemed like it helped Charlie, was me saying to you, okay, is it this puppy or is it any dog? You'd still be feeling the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you were like, yeah, no, it's just one more thing.
Right. It was one more thing.
Right. And I think sometimes trainers can just ask some questions like that to help clarify the situation, to make it really clear as to what is actually going on here and what is fixable and what isn't. So sometimes it's just asking questions that maybe you hadn't thought of can be really useful to a client. So,
right. And I know, like, even if we talk to Colleen, who was the, Charlie, Colleen is a good friend of mine who was the podcast co-host. I joke that she was Julie's podcast first wife, who I was invited to take her place when she transitioned to a different position in her business, a different role or a different direction of her business. But she too, like, she worked a ton with families, and this is one of those issues that lots of families will just endure through it until they have bad outcomes, like dangerous outcomes. And it's often really easy to avoid. Sometimes it's just not a good fit. And it doesn't mean that anybody's wrong or anyone's bad or that the dog is wrong or bad. Now, if when I had asked you the question, this dog or any dog, your answer had been, yeah, no, it's this dog. Well, that would have been a little bit different conversation, because then it's, okay, what is it about this dog that that makes this harder to work? And then we can get to work on whether or not that's adjustable.
Right.
Dogs are not infinitely adjustable any more than we are. So, like, if you're going to ask the herder to sit idly by and watch children run around screaming, that might not be their forte, and it might not be the right match. Or maybe it is, and maybe it's a training issue and we can work through it. But for me, that was the clarifying thing, that when you said, yeah, you could hand me a mythical perfect dog and I think it still would be bad.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, then we have our answer.
Well, I was just going to say, we have my parents' dog that comes over quite frequently with them, and I'm extremely close with her, but I don't long to have her there all the time. When she leaves, I'm like, okay, bye, and that's how, and when Tina asked me that was clarification for myself. Like, I didn't think to ask myself that question. Is it Aussie or is it any breed of dog, any dog, whether it's a puppy or an older dog? And so, like you said, posting on Facebook and having those questions, asking themselves these questions, I think makes a tremendous leap into the decision of, should I keep this dog or not? So.
Well, and I think it's fair to say, like, you were running through some of these questions on your way to the breeder. Like, I don't know that you remember, you told me that when you and Patrick started talking about getting a puppy, it kind of running in the background was this, like, what are we thinking? Like, this is a terrible idea. But we get caught up in, your family has a tremendous amount of love in it. And so I think sometimes we're like, we need another family member because there's so much love. Like we're just, there's all this love, and we have more love, and we have more capacity. And I think my guess is in your case, that's where that enthusiasm and excitement came from. It's really evident with your family that y'all are good at it. And so that does often make us go, okay, we want more. We need another family member because there's just so much awesomeness here. And we have a sweet baby boy, right, on the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I'm always going to vote for the human family members, and put the, like, whether we like it or not, like the dog is extra, right? So are you feeling better since Ozzy went on to that other home and is doing great?
I do feel better, but I miss him, you know, and
right.
And I am hoping that I did make the right decision, that he is happy, you know, and I don't think he remembers, you know, I mean, he's still very young. But in the back of my mind, I think about him quite often. And then, I mean, if I didn't, would I be a bad person, or I don't know, but I do think of him quite often. And, cause he was a really, really good dog, and
yes.
he deserves a family that, has the time and patience and, ability to give him all the things that he deserves that I couldn't. I mean, I was giving him that, but I was so, like I said, spread thin. And so I think, like Tina said, I think he could breed that. So I just hope that he's living it up with his other dog friends and having a good time. So
I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he is too. And I would say too that I would not think you heartless if you didn't think about him as much as you do. I think it's very sweet that you do. But I also think that oftentimes some of the most correct or the best decisions we make are oftentimes the most difficult ones, because they require the greatest amount of sacrifice and love on our part. And anytime you're talking about sacrifice and love, you're talking about a decision that means putting something or someone else above your own desires. And so I think what you did was a very loving thing for this dog. That doesn't mean that it was easy, or that it doesn't hurt, or there aren't some second guesses, or that you might not feel a little bit sad for yourself. Those are all very natural emotions. But what you did was kind and good and compassionate. And sometimes kind and good and compassionate requires a great deal of sacrifice on our part. So it sounds like you made the right decision. You had some good guidance. And I really appreciate you being honest and brave enough to come on and talk about it on our podcast, because hopefully that will give others some of the same courage and compassion to face a situation that may be somewhat similar.
Can we talk quickly about transitioning Ava and how we kind of supported that?
Yeah, it's actually pretty easy. Like you said, she's independent. She was almost annoyed that because he loved her. He was obsessed with her. I talked to her about it. I said, you know, look, this is how mommy is feeling. This is how daddy is feeling. We might need to find Ozzy a new home where he's going to be loved on and catered to. And she kind of looked at me and said, but I'll be sad. And I said, well, I said, that's okay. Mommy's really sad too. And we can see him whenever we want. And that was kind of her reaction. And then that was the end of it. You know, when the man came and got Ozzy, I didn't have Ava here with me. I didn't think that it was appropriate that she was here to watch somebody take the dog.
Right.
So my parents had her for that afternoon. And when she got home, she just said, well, where's Ozzy? And I said, oh, well, he went with his new family. And I told her all the details about it. And she said, okay. And then she goes, well, where's my kitty? And we have a cat who's super social and all that. And she was never coming around anymore since Ozzy was here. Well, she finally came upstairs, and Ava was happy. You know, she was happy to see Nala now coming back into the family with us. And And that was kind of the end of it. And sometimes she'll say, I miss Ozzy, but that's normal. You know, I think it's like me, like he runs through my mind with certain things, but she did really well. And that was who I was most concerned with, because she's 4. She doesn't understand, you know, what mommy's going through, what daddy's going through with the dog situation. But she handled it perfectly. And I'm really happy that she's okay, because that was one thing I was really, really worried about, was that I was ripping my daughter's dog away and she was going to be ruined for life or something, but she's done really well.
Well, and
that's wonderful.
Hadn't she come to you and said something at some point about, like, I'm sorry that Ozzy is wearing you out, or something along those lines?
I went to the bathroom to just cry. I don't know what it is about us women. We go to the bathroom to cry, but that's what I did, because I just sat on the floor and I was like, it just finally all came out. And she came in shortly after, you know, I'd closed the door and I'd heard my husband say, hey, let's give mommy just a minute. And she came in, you know, 5 or 10 minutes later and said, mommy, and you know, she doesn't know why I'm crying. Like, nothing happened to where she could see why I was crying. But she said to me, mommy, I'm really sorry that he's frustrating you. That was her word, because she knows the word frustrated, because I will voice to her if she's frustrating me. I'll be like, you're frustrating mommy. So she could see that without, there was nothing in particular that happened, no big event. He didn't do anything where I was yelling at him or anything. She knew. And I think that kind of helped too, that she could just see I was drowning. And kids are just, they're amazing. They can see things that we think that they don't see. So.
Right. I tell families all the time, we don't hide anything from them.
No. And we try not to either. But in that situation, I was, because like I was hiding it from everyone, you know. Right. I didn't want anybody to know that I was drowning. Right. Pretty much.
Well, I'm glad you let me be a lifeline.
I'm glad you were my lifeline, because I told you I wouldn't reach out unless I needed that help. That was a huge step for me to take. My husband was even shocked. He's like, you called her? And I was like, yeah. He said, wow. So I was desperate, because I don't ask for help ever. But this was a desperate situation, and I needed somebody on the outside to help me get through it, whatever the decision ended up being, whether I was going to keep him or not. I needed a voice of reason and somebody that was going to tell it to me straight, but also give me the options that were best fit for my family.
I think sitting at this kitchen table here at Your Family Dog, I think we have 3 strong women sitting at this table, right? That's what this table holds is some pretty awesome human beings. It was an honor to work with you. I hope that one day in the future, when you're ready, we'll get to work together and we'll get to find, you know, that awesome dog that'll be an awesome fit for your family, that it's not so scary and not a burden, right? But that it's actually just a swirl of, you know, caramel nuttiness that we can add to the mix that enhances things.
Yes.
All right.
I hope so too.
All right. Well, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Tina. And we'll see you all next time on Your Family Dog.
Thanks for listening to Your Family Dog. Got questions? Interesting ideas? Visit www.yourfamilydogpodcast.com to share your thoughts.